A warm welcome to the Drive Safe edition of The Probe. 256 more people killed in road crashes in July alone, raising our national mortality to 1,706. That's between January and July. Now, this represents 24.43% rise as against the same time last year where 1,371 people got killed. So when it comes to injuries, the country has within 7 months recorded 9,299 injuries, with 1,101 of the injuries occurring in July alone. Again, this is 13.43% rise against same time last year. So far, 735 people have been killed through motorcycle-related crashes in 7 months. 113 died in July, with 368 getting injured in just July. So this week alone, I've lost count of the number of accidents I've reported on. 2 legislators, South Dai MP Roxanne Nelson Dapamakbo and Employment and Labour Relations Minister Ignatius Bafuiwa, escaped death narrowly, not forgetting the accident on the Accra-Kumasi highway captured on CCTV. Now, that accident claimed 2 lives and caused several injuries. The list is endless. It goes on and on. Tonight, we take a look at our very own pandemic, bloody roads and the lives it has claimed, mostly due to our negligence. We brought you Crushed, and tomorrow we focus on our young ones, Crushed Young, set to be premiered. We're live on the JoyNews channel, Joy Prime. DSTV is 421, GoTV is 144. On radio, we are live on Joy 99.7 FM. In Kumasi, it's live on Love 99.5 FM, plus a dozen affiliates across the 16 regions. We're on myjoyonline.com and all social media platforms covered. Please keep me company on this bloody edition of The Probe. Let's do this together and hopefully reduce the avoidable crashes on our road. I'll introduce my guest to you shortly after the break. Please stay with me. Welcome back. This is The Probe, the Drive Safe edition, and I'll be introducing my guests shortly. A number of them well vexed in this area, but let's quickly take a look again at the statistics as we have it from January to July so far. The numbers are just disturbing. So on the video wall, I'm sure you can see with the 2021 accident statistics, number of cases reported alone. We have 9,520 cases. The number of persons killed, 1,706. The number of persons injured, 9,299. That's how it looks like January to July alone. We go to the number of vehicles involved. The total number of vehicles involved are 16,226 vehicles. The vehicle types, interestingly, commercial vehicles, we have 5,726. For private, we have 6,829. And the motorcycles is 3,671. Private vehicles topping the figures from January to July 2021. The number of persons killed, take a look at the statistics. The regional distribution, Greater Accra, 391, 279 in the eastern region. We also have 119 for the central region. The western region is 67. In the Ashanti region, we have 357. The Volta is 68. Northern, 39. Upper West, we have 24. You can see that we have in the Upper East region, we have 65. Then in the Bono region, 55. Bono East, 76. Then we take a look at the Ahafo region, is 44. Then we have Oti, 13, and Savannah, we have 61. And this is how the figures look like. In the Western North, 43, and the Northeast, we have 5. And then we go to number of persons that have been killed in January to July alone. Take a look at it. The Greater Accra is still leading. 391, and the Ashanti with 357. That's the regional distribution. That's how it looks like. So this is how it is. Wherever you are as a road user, you now know where we stand in terms of the figures when we come to the road accidents. So that's the regional distribution for the number of persons killed in January to July. That's how we're going through those figures for you. Now we have the number of persons killed comparing 2020 and 2021 within the same period like we've been talking about. So in 2020, we have 1,371. But in 2021, we have 1,706. The same period. This is the number of persons that have been killed to road crashes alone. We are comparing 2020 and 2021. So this is how it looks like. How are you using the roads? How are you contributing to the number of deaths we've recorded so far in this country? That's it. but the experts will be going through them tonight with us. Let me bring in our experts so far. Joining us via Zoom, we have Superintendent Alexander Obeng, Director Public Affairs, Ghana Police Service. We also have Engineer Dr. William Aka. He's a Senior Research Scientist, Building and Road Research Institute. He's joining us also. We have Kwame Kodria. He's Head of Regulations, Inspections and Compliance at the National Road Safety Authority, also joining me via Zoom. We have Seth Boateng, producer, Crushed Young. He gave us Crushed, and then this time we are doing Crushed Young. We'll hear all about it when it comes to how road accidents are claiming lives. But I'll start with you, Superintendent Alexander Obeng. Well, this week alone, I've been talking about how I've lost count in terms of the number of road crashes we've recorded and the deaths as well. What really is accounting for this situation as it stands? Maybe with just this week alone, the statistics that you have, how does it look like?
Good evening to you and for the opportunity, and good evening to my co-panel. I think first of all, the road safety problem that confronts all of us as a country is a problem that is occurring and has inadequate solution currently because of how these crashes are occurring. I think over the years we have, and road safety have been pivotal in this, as well as the first service to Motor Traffic and Transport Department, that there are three major interacting factors, i.e. the road, the vehicle, and the human. And since 1991, when these collisions started, analysis have shown clearly of saying that human behavior account for all the time about 90 of why these crashes are occurring. And that is where our major challenges, and what has happened over the week last week was basically different from what we have been talking about all the time. And by close of day tomorrow, the fine details will be made available. Having said that, these problems are known to all of us with the support of the media, and therefore with this opportunity.
Superintendent, I seem to be having some feedback in your connection. I'll see if we can rectify it quickly, but I'll bring in Mr. Etiahene. Mr. Etiahene, with the Road Safety Authority, I'm sure that you've also been finding out in terms of what actually is happening on our roads. It's been very worrying, at least for this weekend alone, and this week, like we've been talking about, the number of accidents we've recorded. What are the figures telling you? What exactly is the situation, Mr. Etiahene?
Well, good evening and thanks for the opportunity. Good evening to my colleagues on the line. I think this weekend we have had reports yet to validate with the assistance of the police, but there's a report of 2 MPs, one in Sunyani, Volta region. There's been another incident on the Accra-Kumasi highway, and these are familiar routes where these incidents occur. In fact, if you look at the data from January to July, you'll notice that close to about 67% of the deaths are coming from just about 4 out of 16 regions: Accra, Ashanti, Eastern, and I believe Central region. And then these routes are very familiar for the sort of risk that they pose for motorists. Like we've heard, I believe I've seen the CCTV footage on the Accra-Kumasi incident. It was obviously a case of wrongful overtaking, and it's been high on the agenda. Each time we get the opportunity to engage, I mean, it's one of the issues that we highlight. And in as much as motorists are aware of the risky nature of the choices they make, for one reason or the other, they appear unperturbed and try to create problems for other road users. So I think agreeing with the data, that is what it's pointing out, that the incidents we have recorded over the weekend have not occurred in areas that are out of touch. Yeah, the familiar routes, which gives a lot of discomfort, and the contributory factors, as we have read, yet to be validated, but with a lot of credibility, goes to show that the key concerns of speeding, wrongful overtaking, wrong driver choices are continuing to give a bit of discomfort, and that's where we are.
Okay, well, my colleague Seth Boateng at least has become the road crashes police for us here at Multimedia. Anytime there's an accident, you see him posting on the page, and all the time, almost emotional about the situation. Seth, I'll bring you in briefly on this before I go to Engineer Aka on this particular situation. At your last count, I have lost count, but I'm sure you have been tracking the figures in terms of the accidents for this week alone. How does it look like, you'd say?
I've also lost count, but I know it's bad because it started from the Kumasi Highway, the Jaso one. Then we later recorded the MPs. And just this morning, I also saw another post. I'm yet to find out exactly what this happened, but I've also lost count, and it's worrying, the lives we are losing and the injuries we are recording. But as you said, I think anytime there's an accident, somebody is able to inform me of what has happened and the need for us to intensify the education on traffic accidents in the country.
Well, Engineer Aka, well, the concern really is that it appears that we are fixing roads, but the more we fix the roads, the more lives it claims. Comparing the figures we have from 2020 and what we have for 2021, you've been doing a lot of research, scientific research on our situation. What really is happening?
Thank you, MFA. Looking at the trend, not even from last year, if you look at the trend from, let's say, the year 2000, road traffic crashes in the country seem to be on the rise. We tend to have a lot of travel, more vehicles being imported into the country. You have a lot of travel. The roads remain the same. The conditions of the vehicles haven't improved much. Road user behavior is not the best. And so we continue to see the increase in road traffic crashes. Unless we put in the necessary interventions, road traffic crash will continue to rise, because safety will not just happen. We need to put in conscious efforts in order to make sure that road traffic crashes will reduce.
Well, I'll get into the first batch of our questions, because I have loads and loads of questions. I can't do this alone, very bloody. But you have been sending messages on all our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Let's get into the first batch of them. Cyril on Facebook says, ask your panelists whether there is a shortfall or underreporting in the crash statistics as we have it. My questions will come back on the screen. And then, okay, so in the crash statistics, because I suspect strongly these figures could be more. That's the Cyril asking that question. And then we have the second batch. Okay, so let's get answers to this one. Maybe you take this, Engineer Aka. There are concerns that there could be underreporting of our, road crashes. Okay, so I'll take BB Bright, and he's asking, accidents still kills more than COVID-19 yet? COVID-19 is chopping all the money in Ghana. Africa will never revive from this scares. Who did this to us? We ignore our major headache and dwell on poultry issue just because they are white man's headache. That's BB Bright. Kojo says a system was introduced to ensure all all broken vehicles were towed from our roads. The public rejected the towing levy associated with it, and government withdrew the levy. Consequences: broken down vehicles contributing to deaths. Portia says, why is the MTTD not focusing on mounting barriers at accident-prone areas? Simple. Ebenezer Anto says construction of dual roads is certainly the answer to this menace. And then Isaac Chicha Kojo Ajinkwadonko says double roads from Accra to Kumasi, from Tema to Aplau, from Accra to Takrady needed urgently to solve road accidents. So these are the first batch of questions. Engineer Aka, I was going to you on this issue about whether numbers are not actually being underreported. What do you say?
Okay, thank you, MFA. Of course, there is some level of shortfall in the road traffic statistics which is being produced. Officially, the statistics is from the Ghana Police Service. And we are all aware that when a road traffic crash occurs, sometimes it is not reported to the police. So we know that there is some level of shortfall which is coming from two sources. The first one is what I've mentioned, that is non-reporting, where the crash occurs, is not reported to the police and so not included in the official statistics. The second level is under-reporting, where the crash is reported. It is always the case that we are unable, during the collation, to retrieve all the data from the police. That is, for those which have been reported, we are unable to retrieve this data from the police. So yes, there is some level of under-reporting coming from two sources. The first one is non-reporting, where the crash is not reported to the police at all. And even with the one that is reported, we are unable to retrieve or collate all in the official statistics.
So Superintendent Obeng, so it appears that even the figures we have now, it could be more. Is that the case?
All right. I think yes. From what the engineer said, yes, we have all these years we're having such challenges of some cases not being reported to motor traffic and transport traffic officers at jurisdictions where or spots where these crashes may occur. And that is why we continuously sensitize the general public that all have responsibility under the Road Traffic Act, Section 1242, compulsorily report all crashes to police. Again, so far as the service is concerned, any case that's reported relating to crashes are always collated, and we have now capacity to collect on the same day that it occurred, able to collect for week and monthly, quarterly, biannually and annually, and we have same data from 1991 to date, and we share same with our major stakeholder, National Road Safety Authority, and other researchers that applies it through the Inspector General of Police, and therefore we have the primary data that is always available for particularly National and Building and Road Research Institute to carry on with their further analysis and retrieve. There are several instances that it's been known that some cases may not be reported to police, but rather say reported to the medical officer at various hospitals. And I know that plans are far to try to ensure that such data are collated and fused together for national purpose.
Okay, I see Mr. Tiahini nodding to that, this particular concern about maybe the possibility of underreporting of the number of crashes on our roads and possibly the deaths as well. Maybe you contribute quickly to that, then we can get into the other questions.
Well, I think with any data-related activity, you are likely not to have perfection as far as reporting is concerned. There may be some margin of differences, and like Engineer and Supo explained, there are quite a number of instances where, for one reason or the other, crash victims have a certain unwillingness to report at the police station. Some head to the hospitals. And as a result of what we do with the BRRI every year when they update the data beyond the primary data they get from the police, at some point they also reach out to critical hospitals to try to mop up the numbers. Nonetheless, I think we all agree that there are a bit of concern in that area, and we are working together to try to bring harmony to that. On this point, the Ghana Health Service, together with the Building Road Research Institute, and I believe the WHO and the authority, the police, working together to try to straighten up those concerns. But otherwise, from 1991, the data we have served us very well, in spite of the constraints that they may pose, serve us to the extent of assisting us to identify the key areas where these incidents occur, the core contributory factors, the black spots, to give us a better understanding of the safety issue and what will be done. But we need to address those gaps, and work is being done to bring finality to those concerns. Okay, so there are concerns. Could you ask the question about a system being introduced to ensure all broken vehicles? It was a very controversial issue where we'll get to tow broken down vehicles from our roads. The public rejected the towing levy associated with it, and government had to withdraw that levy. I'll come to you on that, but Seth, you have traveled the length and breadth of this country whilst putting together the two documentaries, the first Crushed and then Crushed Young. Let's see if you can recall off the top of your head the number of broken down vehicles you may have encountered on your way to the various destinations while putting together the documentary. Are you able to recall?
Yes, and I remember my last interaction with Superintendent Alex Obeng when he traveled up north and was returning. Supo, I think if you remember, you counted about 200 broken down vehicles.
On that fateful Sunday.
And I remember, yes.
200?
Yes, when he was returning, yes, about 200.
Yes, on my way.
I have counted.
Right.
And
Yes.
Seth, and you have counted how many?
Even from my rounds recently, I have also counted more. Even from Kumasi, from Accra to Kumasi, I think on my way I counted no less than 10 of them by the roadside. Some had broken down in the middle of the road. Some were involved in an accident, and they've left those vehicles on the shoulders of the road. And they are very dangerous, especially when you are driving at night. And aside that, there are other vehicles who would not speed. You understand? So they appear stationary, but they are moving slowly. And I know Engineer Carr will tell you that those who account for some of the accident, because when you are speeding, thinking the vehicle behind you is also speeding, but you approach that vehicle and you realize that it's moving slowly. This accounts for most of the accidents, and the BRRI did a study, and it showed that speeding vehicles and stationary vehicles also accounted for that. So it's quite a serious issue that we have to pay attention to. Okay, well, so it appears it's time for us to take a look at this again. Engineer Carr, what do you say to Kojo? He feels that the consequence of this broken down vehicles is contributing to the number of deaths. You've heard Superintendent mention the number of broken down vehicles they found on their way across the country. Kojo is asking, it appears that it's time for us to take a look at this again in terms of our road toll levy. That was very controversial, but what do you think?
Okay, so if you look at what we call the fatality index, that is the number of people killed as a proportion of injured casualties, you realize that hit-pad vehicle has one of the highest. Because usually, if the vehicle don't have reflectors, they don't make themselves visible enough. Because the other vehicle is traveling at a very high speed, they run into the vehicle, and the impacts from the speeding vehicle is very high, and mostly these crashes result in fatalities, or they are usually fatal. So what we need to do is to put in the systems in place to make sure that broken down vehicles are towed immediately. So we should revisit the tolling system which we attempted implementing some time back, and make sure that broken down vehicles don't be on the road for, more than 30 minutes.
Okay.
Well, we are putting measures to warn drivers, like big drivers having advanced warning signs. But usually what is happening is that we use non-reflective materials like leaves. We just cut something and put it by the vehicle, which is non-reflective. And so at night time, it doesn't work. So we should put in measures. Make sure that at most 30 minutes, the vehicles should be towed from the route to prevent some of these fatal crashes. Because running into a broken down vehicle is most of the time fatal or serious.
Okay. Well, Lawyer Tahini, this issue also, I'm sure you have seen that you're very interested in this. I first want to find out the status of it before, we introduced it some time back and the public raised concerns about it. It was withdrawn. Where exactly are we with it?
Well, the status is that the project was suspended, and we were required to get back to the table to try to engineer other options. I'm aware that some work has been done, and the Ministry of Transport is having a look at it, and possibly would table an amendment to the old law to Parliament when the time is due. But it is sad that after close to about 4 to 5 years, we're back on the table having this conversation, because at the time, the issues that were raised have not significantly changed in terms of the impact and what ought to be done, the low capacity issues, and the fact that we live with this problem. And by far, the suggestions that were proposed at the time were potentially what was to serve the best interest of the public. Nonetheless, in the fullness of time, we are getting back to the table to have that discussion.
Okay.
The bit about disabled vehicles is the fact that the risk exists alone is sufficient ground for us to think through a solution. You forget about the numbers, but the fact that you drive on a high traffic zone like Accra Kumasi, 10 vehicles may be on the low. If you're on a typical weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you potentially will count close to about 50 to 70 of such vehicles at very dangerous locations. Bearing in mind that at night, that road is potentially dark and have visibility issues and compound the problems the more. So with the lessons we've had, I'm sure when we get around the table to begin to reflect on the issue for the second time, we'll be very dispassionate and we'll have as much support from the public. And maybe this time we'll think through a solution that works for all.
Okay. Superintendent, there was a question also about why the MTTD is not focusing on mounting barriers at accident-prone areas. It's a question Portia is asking. I'm sure you can give her an answer briefly, then we can get into the next batch.
All right. I think that road safety thrives on interventions, because they are activity-based, they are intervention-based, and among myriad interventions that are known as a result of analysis and experience include the dualization and then lighting of the system and treatment of blast spots in order to eliminate the risks that exist that caused the last crash. And one of such is deployment of physical traffic officers to be present and to be visible and to increase high sense of detection and apprehension when seeing behavior that caused the last crash is being manifested. And I'm aware that the Ministry of Roads and Highways is carrying out certain projects that seek to improve conspicuity at certain places that the data are known to be accident prone or black spots. However, there are also some places that you see police presence, but we should, it is known around the world that in order to eliminate many of these risks on particularly transit routes and highways that are many in our jurisdiction, if you want to rely only on police deployed at strategic locations that are known to be accident prone, we may achieve the necessary goals and objects. Therefore, I'm not surprised that currently many are advocating transit routes, certain portions that receive high volumes of traffic to be dualized, and then certain portions provided with certain high visibility traffic equipment, i.e. markings, and then solar lights in order to support the existing warning signs as you approach such spots. And that will go about. Again, you cannot also discuss this without consistent deterrent in terms of police looking out to arrest, investigate, charge, and prosecute those that are found to have offended the law. And I think that so far the MTTV have done well, but I believe that in the coming days there needs to be intensification. Do
you have statistics in terms of how many have been prosecuted with road traffic, accidents and other road traffic related offences? Do you have data on that? Because most people say that we don't see the logical conclusion of such cases. Either they pay their way out of it or nothing really happens.
So far this year, between this same period, police efforts led to the arrest of about 2,500, about 1,100 were presented to courts, were convicted, and sent. 11 are already in jail.
Okay.
About 1,422,000 Ghana cedis as court fines have been imposed on some of these who were involved in dangerous, reckless, some under influence of alcohol, some leaving their vehicle in dangerous position, some using non-roadworthy, and those who also were prohibited drivers because they were unlicensed.
Okay.
Others that the court agreed that they should be sanctioned in order to change behavior. And I think that we should have even done better than this. So, and it is also that when discussing this intervention, we cannot also forget that sustained, consistent, and purposive sensitization, publicity, education should be forgotten.
Well, we'll come to that bit. I'm sure it's part of the questions that I've seen. So over 1.4 million in monies that you've been able to retrieve, spot fines and all. That's interesting. But let's get into the next part of questions that we have because we need to make time to talk about crashed as well. William says different agencies under different ministries being coordinated by the National Road Safety Authority and the Ministry of Transport. I see this to be a problem, he says. Efe says, have we been able to quantify the cost of crashes to the nation? Komla says, how do we deal with what I call the Abubuya menace on our roads? Love says, are there any peculiar issues the police have noticed with accidents in the country? Are there some striking similarities? Efo says, do our roads and its nature have anything to do with the many road accidents we witness year after year? And Della says, isn't there any urgent way our current roads can be remodeled to fix the numerous killings on the road? Okay, so first let's deal with the Abubuya menace because this week has been very topical. Dr. Akka, what do you say to how we deal with this Abubuya? I don't know if you've encountered them on your drive anywhere, especially on the motorway.
Okay, thank you, MFA. So with the issue of Abubuya, what I would say is that we need political commitment to deal with this issue. Looking at the statistics, motorcycles was formerly around 2000 was the 7th riskiest mode of transport in Ghana. It moved up the ladder. Last year, it was according to the motor traffic and then the police department, it was the highest in terms of fatalities in the country. We need a political will. You know, this issue of motorcycle, as I see, it's not transport anymore, right? Because looking at it, it is illegal for anybody to operate motorcycle on commercial basis. That is the law. All motorcycles are registered as private vehicles. So for anybody to use it for commercial purpose is illegal. But what do we see? We know, all of us know, that it is being used for commercial purpose. The police are not doing anything. It has now turned political. So we need a strong political will to deal with this issue of motorcycle. And that is what I would say. If we are not careful, motorcycle fatalities will derail all our gains that we've made. Formerly, we had pedestrian as the road user class with the highest share of fatalities. That is going down, but motorcycle fatalities is on the rise. So we need a political will to deal with the issue. The police, we know people are practicing illegality on our roads. What are we doing? We should get them, if we are supposed to make sure that it is registered as commercial basis. Let's do it. But for me, from the statistics I have seen, I will not support that, especially in the commercial, in the urban areas, in terms of mobility. But maybe we can restrict some in the rural areas because there is some gap in our transportation space which needs to be filled. But we need to restrict it, come up with the appropriate laws so that we restrict it to where we need them. In the rural areas where transport, the roads are bad, transport vehicles are not available for people to use. We can restrict it to the rural areas. But in the urban centers where we have a lot of vehicles, we have good roads, we should ban them, enforce the law, and make sure that we deal with these issues. Because if you are not careful, it will derail our agenda on road traffic safety.
Mr. Kodia, have we been able to quantify the cost of crashes to the nation? Is it Seth? Seth, you want to add something to that?
Yes, I wanted to make a point about the motorcycle. So far, 735 lives have been lost through motorcycle-related crashes in 7 months. In 7 months, per the data we have. And for what Doc was saying, Techiman is doing something wonderful. They are not allowing any Pragia, all those things, to use main roads.
Okay.
The traditional leaders sat down with the local authorities and they have agreed that under no circumstances must any Aboboya or Praga use their main roads. They are all using the back door and they head straight to the market. And something I also noticed, every single rider in Techiman has license. When you go to other parts of Ghana, you see minors riding. It is not the case in Techiman. So if they have been able to do this in Techiman and people are respecting this, why can't we replicate this across the country? And it is doable. It is saving lives in Techiman.
Is this a situation, Superintendent Alexander, is this a situation that you are able to deal with? We heard Engineer Aka mention that it takes a lot of political will for this to happen. So briefly, is this a situation that you think that the police will have under their control?
I think a motorcycle policy over the years have not yielded the needed outcome, and therefore, if experts are calling for a second look, among others, why not? Because studies have shown that the general public interest in motorcycle over other user class is overwhelming and almost everywhere, both urban and rural. And it is patronized heavily by all, and it is worrying that right in our eyes, motorcycle now is a lead killer when it comes to road user class, both private, commercial, and all that. And it is such a worrying situation that I think that we should all come around the table and take a second look at it. First, the policy, to the law, and then the procedures for enforcement, among others.
Okay.
And take a look at the use, because, like I said, currently it is everywhere, and it is being patronized by all. Our enforcement generally is restricted to license, both the rider's license, the vehicle license, i.e. the insurance and roadworthiness, and then using it in a manner that will not pose danger to the occupant, therefore protective clothing wearing, and then riding it appropriately on the right, and putting all the required number plates on them. That is
okay.
Which the enforcement is able. In terms of use, it has been very challenging. The engineer was talking about commercialization of motorcycles. The number, though, seems to be private, but it is not. The blue and is number plate for motorcycle, for private, and for dispatch.
Okay.
And dispatch is commercial, and that is why almost all police urbanized jurisdictions where businesses are undertaking supplies using the dispatch. Most motorcycles have their buckets at the rear, and they are carrying food and more. And people are riding on it for commercial purpose, not only carrying fare-paying passengers, but carrying goods and services. And whether it is a Boboya three-wheeler or two motor bicycles, they are all being used for such purposes, and it is so much so that if we are not also careful in creating access separate from the roadway for them as it were.
I'm sure this issue about these motorcycles will need a whole show for that as well, but at least we know what to do. We all agree on what should be done. But we're getting into crash shortly because Seth has to walk us through everything that went into this. But briefly, Lawyer Kodia, are you able to quantify the cost of crashes to the nation? If they ask that we can get answers to it briefly, then we can get into crash.
Yes, I think we've done a study on it, except that it's been some time, and it's been estimated that close to about 1.6% of our GDP each year is money lost to crashes. When you quantify the lives lost, administrative costs, hospital bills, and other related cost items, that is what we put the figure to. But so when you are talking about 10 to 12,000 crashes a year, MFR, what it means is that about 10 to 12,000 families in a year are affected by the consequence of these crashes. So either somebody is dead or another has suffered injury, some of which are very severe and may lead to permanent disability. And you look at the demographics, those having to suffer these incidents are often males, adult males between the ages of 18-55, their productive age bracket. And that's the way you want to look at it. But in terms of the economic cost, from the study which we have done in the past, I believe, which is due for some updates, it puts the cost to about 1.6% of our GDP. So the more we improve, I mean, that the related issues come to hit us. But quickly on the earlier question on the disabled vehicles, I mean, we forgot to make the point that in recent times, the insurance industry have also taken up the challenge to try to introduce one model or the other as part of the measures going up, and it hasn't become as clear yet, but it's important to mention that they have expressed interest on the matter going forward, so that as we think through a solution together, we could also bear that in mind. Okay.
Well, Seth, I have a number of questions for you from our audience. Let's go through it. I think Alice starts with a question to Seth. What inspired this new documentary? Alice is asking. And we have more for Seth. What kind of emotions did you go through filming this documentary? Joe is asking. So we on to Crash Young. I saw the first, I couldn't watch the full documentary, Crashed, but we are going to Crash Young. We're focusing on the young ones. Alice is asking you a question about what went into it. Maybe you can briefly give us responses.
So after Crash, I had to travel up north. And when I got to Kumasi, I don't know what came over me. I just placed the call to Konfunochi asking if I could get somebody who had suffered amputation through road traffic accident. They said yes. I went there and I met with Moses. And when I spoke to him, I interviewed him, and he told me he was going through. I decided to go further and document how we many our young ones, how we are killing them because of how we drive and how we not really care about their safety on our roads. So Moses is the inspiration behind this documentary, and the stories he told me is what pushed me to dig further and get the data and get other people and speak to about how we are killing our young ones and how we are destroying our futures today from now.
Okay, so I see Joe also asking what kinds of emotions you went through filming, but I also want to find out what it revealed, because it looks like Moses' story is not the only story that you found out. What did it tell you? Because most people think that it's only the adults that are affected by these crashes on our roads, but to hear that our young ones are also affected is heart-wrenching a bit. So tell us what it revealed.
What has shocked me, what revealed, it's not only about the injuries, but the number of children who have been killed through road traffic accidents are in the mortuary and their families are not even aware. They are unknown bodies. Or we often hear that a child has gone missing, and we hear announcements on radio, on TV, that parents are looking for a child. Who knows that that child could be one of those in the mortuary. They have been killed and nobody knows about them, and they're in the mortuary. So after announcing that there are unknown bodies, people should come and identify them. If nobody shows up, they will go and bury them. So there are children who have been buried, their families not knowing. You think they are there, so you are still looking for them. They have been killed and buried, and you don't know. That is what shocked me. And also the story of Peter, that 10-year-old boy. He was 6 years, was sent home from school to collect 3 CDs. 3 CDs. He owed 1 CD printing fee and 2 CD studies fee. 6-year-old boy sent from school to go and collect this money. He went to the grandmother he lived with, where the grandmother worked. The mother, she wasn't there. He decided to head home. Whilst crossing the road, he was hit. And if you see the accident video, this little boy, 6 years, in the middle of this road, screaming with his legs broken and scattered. After it, it's sad. And this boy tells me, I used to play with my friends, but I can no longer play with them. I'm in this wheelchair. And when he drags his buttocks, and we understand, because he's amputated right under his manhood, so he has just his buttocks to use. When he started and he's tired, he put his palms on the floor, up with his head around, and he'll be walking with that. It's heart-wrenching that we are doing this to our young ones.
Through no fault of theirs, careless driving, and they would have to go through this. And Crushed Young is premiering tomorrow. Where can we... When is it happening? Just tell us a bit more about the premiering tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 4 p.m. at Kumasi Mall. They have a big auditorium where we're going to observe all the COVID protocols. So 4 p.m., a lot of people have indicated that they will be coming. We have officials from the CCTV. We have the Road Safety Authority people. We have DVLA. We have quite some personalities in town because there were some big funerals in town, and they are all here, and also then to be coming back for the Agenda 111 in the Ashanti region. They are also waiting. So we're going to have the stakeholders we need to watch the practical interventions we need to save lives. They are all present. And my invitation that if you want to come, you can come to our office at Love FM. You pick up a ticket, and you join us. Watch this and And
I know the conversation continues tomorrow on the AM show. This is not the last of it. Crushed Young is leading us to review a lot of things when it comes to the crashes on our roads. I know we are doing this with the National Road Safety Authority, the police, and TTD, amongst others. I'll give you the final words, 30 seconds. I'm sure that will be to the National Road Safety Authority on this. I'm sure you're partnering us on this Crushed Young as well. What does it tell you when you realize that our young ones are also involved in this? Briefly, Mr. Kodia, I'll give you the final word.
It's been done to bring fatalities, child-related fatalities down. As Engineer Aka mentioned earlier on, it's one of the areas that are going down. Nonetheless, these are issues that must be played out. The level of indiscipline, irresponsibility of parents and guardians. And oftentimes you drive around town, you feel so bad that you find children loitering around the road, virtually struggling to cross the road without any level of assistance. I think my expectation is that this documentary will highlight these concerns so that adult road users, regardless of how connected or disconnected they are to kids, will begin to offer some measure of assistance when they find them in the road environment.
Okay. Well, we're grateful for your time, gentlemen, here on tonight's edition of The Probe. And like I said, we'll continue the discussion on all our platforms tomorrow. So many thanks for your company, Engineer Kade. We're grateful. He's a senior research scientist, Building and Road Research Institute. We had Superintendent Alexander Obing, Director, Public Affairs, Ghana Police Service. Also, Kwame Kudia, he's head of regulations, inspections and compliance, and my very own colleague Seth Boateng, producer of Crushed Young, and we are premiering that tomorrow in Kumasi. You would want to be a part of it. It's not just figures. You may think that it's just numbers that we put out there. Wait until you know who is behind those figures and you realize that you need to drive safe on our roads. I am MFA Pao. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. A Walk with Jesus is up next for radio audience, Sex in Marriage. Another edition comes your way next Sunday. Many thanks on behalf of the entire team. Have a good evening.